Forever. Dog.
Hello, and welcome to Outgrown, where we have guests on to discuss something from popular culture that they used to profoundly identify with and once thought would define them forever, eventually outgrew. I'm Julia Vickerman.
And I'm Tom Scharpling.
How are you today, Tom?
Well, honestly, I'm doing pretty good. I'm having a good day. It's nice to be here.
It is.
We're 5 episodes in on Outgrown, which is so much fun. It's been so much fun, and we're so excited about the reaction we've gotten with the show, and it's so exciting that people are finally hearing and watching the thing we talked about for a very long time and worked on for a long time.
It's been very fun doing this with you.
No, it's the best time I could humanly have.
All right, so
but we're not just
the only
two of
ones.
us
We're not the only ones
today.
in this room.
No, we have Alex Steed is here.
Oh, hello.
Hi,
How are
Alex.
Oh, so honestly, great.
Thank you.
Alex is the
Uh-huh.
Alex is the co-host of the You Are Good podcast,
I am.
as well as a zine maker and wonderful photographer,
Oh, thank you.
and a lovely human being.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I'm in such good company.
Yeah, maybe not necessarily in that order.
Yeah, sometimes it depends on the day. When you ask.
And your podcast that you do with Sarah Marshall is one of my favorite podcasts.
Thank you so much.
And it is really one of the reasons I wanted to do this
Oh
podcast.
my gosh, that's so nice.
Yeah,
Thank
so-
you. I love doing it.
Yeah, you and Sarah are just so intelligent and articulate and smarter than me. And
Simply not true.
and yeah, I felt like I was friends with you guys before I even met you. And then we met you by coincidence at the Haunted Hayride in Los Angeles last Halloween.
It was crazy because you were on the best show,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was like, came home, I was like, Alex, was you a cool guy. Can't wait till you meet him. And then the next night, we go to the Haunted Hayride.
Was it really the next
Yeah, it was
night?
the next night.
Pretty much the next night.
Oh, wow.
Exactly.
Because then I was just like, hey, Julia, that's Alex, the guy from the...
And I was like,
And you were
what?
just like, you remember I said you'd meet him someday?
Because I didn't know what. I didn't know what you looked like yet because I
Well,
hadn't seen the show yet.
That was such a funny sequence of events because I came here to the studio just to learn how streaming worked. I didn't expect to be on the show. Then I was on the show, and then later, accidentally, Tom and I ran into each other at Fred.
We went to Fred 62, and suddenly it's like, hey, Alex is here.
Oh, so that was
Hey.
before
Right.
the hayride?
Totally.
But yeah,
It was another coincidence, and then we saw
So
each
you
other
guys were just-
we
coincidentally.
met
You had
3
little
times in 24 hours.
magnets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then
Yeah.
Tom said truly my favorite thing that anyone said to me in LA so far, which is, hey, do you like Halloween? But true, that was a remarkable
What?
series of days for me too. That was the first couple of days that I was like, oh, I'm in LA. I like being here.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
wonderful.
No, it was so much fun, and I'm so glad now we're all friends.
It's so nice.
I was going to say pals, but I upgraded it.
I really
to friends.
appreciated that real-time upgrade.
Oh,
Yeah.
is that how it
I
works
said
in your brain? Pals, friends.
Lovers.
Wow, that took a big leap.
Yeah.
Alex, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about, and you are dressed for the occasion, and I appreciate it. We were talking about JEM and the Holograms, a cartoon from the 1980s that either people know and love or don't know at all.
Yeah, and on that note, Tom,
Yes.
not very familiar with this program.
I think you're being kind by saying not very familiar.
Yeah, because maybe you weren't as
of
young of a
age.
child. Well, you were. It was 1985.
Yeah, what were you doing in 1985?
Being sad.
All right, well, this was
Let's get into that right
Now,
now.
by that point, no, we've gotten into that. It's out there. People want to know about me being sad.
I read the book. I
No,
know.
but thank you, Alex. No, by that point, I was a troubled teen.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Like I was in, when I was
Not into cartoons for little children.
No, I was into a lot of Depeche Mode.
Oh, yeah.
Was kind of driving the bus then.
Fair enough. Well, but you are familiar with the title, Gem and the Holograms, and the.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So, what do you think Gem and the Holograms is about?
Okay. Obviously, it's a rock group. Jem is the leader of the
Okay.
group. I do think there's some sort of identity element to it, where it's like, who's Jem is actually this person, and now nobody knows. It's like a Hannah Montana kind of situation.
I forgot.
Where it's just like your boat, like there's like the real person. It's like a superhero story. It's like Clark Kent and Superman.
Beautiful.
That there's some version of that, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of fantastic elements to it, where like maybe flying through the sky and space dimension travel and things like that.
Okay.
And I think there's a lot of stars zipping by and like rainbows and things like that.
Yep.
And that
You're not
is
wrong.
the entirety of what I know about Jem and the Hologram. What I would guess.
Would you guess that she also runs an orphanage?
That would not have been my first guess. No, I would not have guessed that Jem runs an orphanage. Is that true?
She does.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. There are a lot of stars and rainbows.
Okay.
And but there also is an orphanage.
There also is an orphanage.
Which honestly, I forgot the orphanage piece until going through the
kind of same.
the summary, because I was like,
Okay.
That wasn't the drama I was trying to keep up with as a kid.
well,
Sure.
it's an awfully strange. Well, okay, wait. Let me just read you. For those who don't know, Jem and the Holograms is an American animated musical television series that ran from 1985 to 1988, and the series is about a record company owner, Jerrica Benton, and her singer alter ego, Jem, and the adventures of her band, Jem and the Holograms.
Okay.
And
So she runs a record label and an orphanage?
yes,
Of course.
as you do.
Of course. She gives back.
Okay. I like that.
And there are, in this record label / orphanage, there are 12 foster girls
Yeah. Always around.
called the
Apparently.
Starlight Girls.
Okay.
And I'd completely forgotten that aspect, because does it ever fit into more than like 2 episodes that they run an orphanage?
Yeah, and also like when you're a kid, like I think like the text of shows like this would provide for you stuff to then use your own imagination with your friends and stuff, and you were never like, let's focus on the orphanage part of doing this, or at least I didn't.
Yeah.
It's like if you're watching Little Orphan Annie, you don't also wish that was a recording studio with rival bands, and it's 2 completely separate concepts.
But this, to your point about Little Orphan Annie, this was in the air, because it only just struck me that Punky Brewster is modern Little Orphan Annie, which
You're
was
right.
playing off the fact that Annie had just come out.
You're right. Orphans were really having a big moment in the 80s.
Shows for girls had orphans in them.
I daydreamed about being an orphan.
Of course.
Yeah, like it was the thing to do. For women of a certain age, we all at one point were like romanticizing being an orphan, which
definitely.
is very odd.
Yeah. It's like saying,
I wish my parents were dead.
yeah, basically, it's in a nutshell, you're saying, not into my parents.
Yeah, I don't know if
Like
think
a
my
fresh
parents
start.
loved my constant singing of "The sun will come out tomorrow."
Okay. So what is Jem's name?
Jerrica Benton.
Jerrica. Okay, so Jerrica
You know,
Benton.
Jerrica,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
normal name.
Jerrica. So
And she's a Nepo baby. Like she
Okay.
has a record company and an orphanage and
Okay.
a supercomputer because her father had all of those things and was
She
a
is an
developer on
orphan.
it. She's an orphan.
she's an orphan, but her is this her stepfather or adopted father?
No, her father.
It was her
late
father left.
Oh, so this was like she's an orphan. Her father,
her father
passed
left
away.
her
Yeah.
the orphanage.
Okay.
and the record
And the
company.
record company.
But the record company
Like-
was stolen from her
Mhm.
by, what is his name? I have it written down. How can I not remember? Eric Raymond.
Oh, Eric Raymond.
This sounds like a soap opera.
It is.
It is
Not
a soap opera.
not a kid's cartoon.
Very a soap
It's
opera.
you could argue, that it's not for anyone, really.
Uh-huh. So
Um,
okay, so Jerrica has the orphanage and the record label. The Starlight Kids,
Starlight Girls,
Starlight Girls,
I think.
are
sure.
are they the holograms?
No. The holograms are a completely separate idea
Okay.
than the 12 foster
Yes.
girls.
They had. It's worth noting they had 130 episodes. Like they covered a lot of ground, and they also they stayed with, like, a lot of shows like this won't stay within a linear storyline, and they actually kept the storyline going. So they covered a lot of ground.
So you can't get on midstream without being a little confused.
You won't understand at all.
So if you're like a child who starts in 86 with this show, it's like, best of luck to you.
Best of luck, dude.
You can't follow. Is that honestly what it would be like?
No, there's like enough. You're
if you tune into episode 2, nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense.
If you didn't see episode 1?
Yeah, there's enough there for like, if you're
just bizarre.
Totally. Like the all the elements, like the style and the clothes and there's enough there for it to maintain your attention, but you have to pick up a lot of lore in order for it to matter to you.
Sure.
I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's like as a kid tuning in, I just remember colors and girls and fashion. I wasn't really paying that much attention to the continuity. But yes, the Holograms are the band that Jem is the lead singer of.
All right.
And they all live at the orphanage.
Yep, absolutely. And the band knows her secret identity.
Yes.
And her boyfriend, Rio / manager, somehow does not. So there's a lot of...
he's the manager?
Yeah, he's the band manager. So there's a lot of... will they, won't they? Will he find out? Will he not? This show's actually, you know what it has a lot in common with is Gossip Girl, but it's like less... harrowing and trashy, and I say that as a person who loves Gossip Girl.
Okay, so
wait, but we also have to talk about the other thing her father left her is a supercomputer with earrings that she wears, where she triggers the earrings, and then the earrings trigger a hologram, which is her alter ego Jem.
So the supercomputer helps with the
you
transformation.
Don't understand?
No, I understand perfectly. This is a breeze. It's not at all overstuffed.
We're just getting started.
No, the orphanage makes perfect sense for this. like the idea, like she could have just been left with a record label and the computer.
Yeah, that would have been more than enough.
But I don't know. I'm not exactly figuring out why there's also an orphanage in any of this.
But also, it's not just the earrings trigger the appearance of Synergy, who comes out of the supercomputer.
Who is essentially Siri from...
Yeah.
It's like the personification of the AI.
Yes. And then the Jem persona is a hologram.
Yeah, like it skin grafts a hologram to you, so you look like a different person.
But it's actually on.
There's no reason she should have an alter ego.
Yeah, I mean, if Jerrica is on television as Jem, everyone who's watching the television sees Jem. They don't see Jerrica because she has a hologram costume that make people think that she's...
Why does she also does she need because, you have all these other Hannah Montana's an excellent. Miley or whatever. Is her name Miley in the show? Hannah? I don't know.
I think it is, yeah.
Her name is Miley in the show and then Hannah.
Yeah.
And then, but I haven't seen much of that, but I'm assuming she wants to live a normal kid life.
Sure.
And also wants to be superstar at night. But like Jerrica doesn't... we don't ever learn why does she want a normal life? Because she runs a record label.
The reason she has to so what happened was the record label was changing hands from Jerrica's father.
You know who loves this? Little girls.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, no, this is perfect for children.
All the property transfer was going through probate and it was going to Jerrica. And then Eric Raymond, who is a bad guy who's a manager at the record company, somehow intercepted the transfer and he got the record company. So he took the record company from Jerrica, and she was like, well, if he's going to take the record company, if he finds out about all this other stuff my father has, then he will take it and use it for evil or something.
Okay.
So she has to keep it secret.
One of those evil record companies.
Exactly. And then for whatever reason, her primary form of being able to fund the orphanage is being a rock star.
Like the biggest pop star in the world.
Exactly.
So she signed herself to the label.
Yes.
And this is all episode 1.
This is all episode 1.
By episode 2, we're done with all this.
Is episode 1 7 hours long?
And we haven't even covered when they time travel to visit Mozart.
But also,
well, we didn't. How could we?
The other aspect of the show is then Eric Draymond. Is it Draymond or Raymond?
I think it's Raymond, but I love Draymond better.
Yeah.
It's like how the character in The Crow's name is Eric Draven, and it's so
just
good.
subtle.
Yeah.
Um,
The Raven.
But okay, so the other aspect of the show that's very important, the actual other important characters are the rival band that Eric Raymond manages. He started his own label called Misfits Music.
Yes.
And
they
the
are called
band,
Misfits.
the Misfits, which has nothing to do with the actual real life band, the Misfits.
From the pride of Lodi, New Jersey.
Absolutely. You know, I met and
Misfits.
befriended Jerry Only on a plane.
Really?
And then he would like, he's so lovely. Like he was so, and for some period of time, we would like talk on the phone about what it was like for him to be a dad. It was like a very like nice series of
amazing. That's so
conversations.
cool.
That's
Because I
nice.
saw him on a plane and there was just this like cool looking middle-aged guy wearing a crisp new Misfit shirt tucked into his dungarees.
Really?
And I was like, I like, and we're waiting at the bathroom, and I was like, I like your shirt. And he's like, it's my band. And I was like, I know.
Wow.
And then we
Oh,
just
that's
became
amazing.
friends. And
Wow.
occasionally, for a
That's
little while,
very
he would
funny.
text and just be like, hope you're doing well, Jerry.
That's so cool.
Wow. Cool.
Wow.
It was so
I
nice.
I
love that.
love that's amazing. So this band, the Misfits,
They
has nothing to do with they're not doing
It would have been amazing if they just put the Misfits
Yes.
on the
they're
show.
just like, well, I got
No, but
something to say.
They're like a
like, well, this is a bad band for children to hear.
the Misfits are a British in attitude and
Okay.
sometimes affect, but not consistently, punk band. But not
you
British.
mean in the show?
Yes.
Yeah, they're not British because then a
Oh.
British band comes
Oh,
in.
it's the other
later.
British. Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
you're
is this one of those?
They talk like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Wait,
they
who
talk like
talks
white
like
trash.
that? And I want to hear more of that. What was that? Who talks like
The
what?
lead singer of the Misfits is named Pizzazz, and
Okay.
she has green hair,
Mhm.
and she wears a lot of pink, and it's
This is,
definitely
I'm
not a
learning this about
comparison.
you now. Is this clearly someone's influenced by pizzazz?
It's funny because I mean, Gem and the Holograms was hugely important to me, but obviously I had pink hair for 10 years and now I have green hair. So, read into that as you will.
Yeah.
But
So-
but the Misfits run by Pizzazz, their songs, Gem and the Holograms music is very poppy. It's kind of
Aspirational.
aspirational. They sing about like
Positive.
music is magic.
Yeah.
She's got the power.
Sure, so it's
Twilight
like-
in Paris.
Oh God, yes.
And then the Misfits, all of their songs are about how great they are at making music and how much of a loser you are. So it'll be songs like Making Mischief, Get Out of My Way.
Yes. And they're much more entertaining.
Well, that's what I was going to say. There's always this tradition of whether it's The Devil Went Down to Georgia, when you're just like, I prefer the Devil's music when they do the battle
Yeah.
rather than the good Johnny, the good guy's music.
Precisely.
See,
The
I
Emmett Otter's Jug Band, there was the Evil Band, and you're just like, they're better.
I
than-
agree with that. The Devil Went Down to Georgia. Clearly, the
Yeah.
Devil's song is better. But
Yeah.
I would argue that the Misfits are horrendous.
Oh wow.
Because
okay.
I just listened to them for 30 minutes driving over here.
That's a lot of minutes.
And their songs all start dun, 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 dun,
Yeah,
dun,
yeah.
dun, 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 on the keyboard because it's
Not
like we're the
complex.
bad guys. And then it'll be
Okay.
like making mischief. Like it's like
Still sounds
very
pretty good.
nasally. it's definitely got it's more fun in the sense that it has more attitude
Sure.
and they're just it's
Okay.
outright the idea that the number 2 most popular band in this universe only sings about how great they are and how much Gem sucks
Yeah.
is very
Yeah.
funny.
It is
Like
great.
it would be like I don't know if what's a music rivalry that's existed in the real world.
Well, right now, Drake and Kendrick.
Well, that's a really good point because that's actually okay. Well,
That's
never mind.
Drake would
That's
be
actually-
Gem and the Holograms.
They
then.
are having a Gem and the Holograms
Yes.
versus the Misfits.
Well, which would be
moment.
which then? You both tell me. Is Drake?
I
The
think
Misfits?
Drake is Gem, I guess.
I think Drake is
Yeah.
Gem and Kendrick would be the Misfits.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Because
Mm-hmm.
I know I say that with all Kendrick.
Gem
Kendrick,
can't.
listen, I'm not slighting you in any way. I love you
Oh,
very much.
Alex doesn't want any more beef.
Kendrick,
Don't come after him
You
next.
can do no wrong.
Don't come after Alex.
But I
next.
think in this paradigm, you are the Misfits.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the Gem would never be able to zing the Misfits back. They are
Never.
bad at that.
Never. Yeah, that's not in their skill set.
But also the
Drake.
Misfits then take it the Misfits take it to another level though, where often the way that they try to foil the holograms is through physical threats
Yeah.
and putting them in like physical danger, like criminal behavior.
Exactly.
And
Yeah,
like
they're trying to do away with JEM so they can be number one.
They have tried, and this is the stakes in this world are interesting because it's not just like zany cartoons, anvils falling on people, and the concept of like death and like getting arrested and murder exist in this world.
Okay.
So yeah, it's kind of like the same stakes as like G.I. Joe, which is the same. It's Hasbro, so it's kind of the same.
Right, and these are all properties that were made so specifically to sell toys.
Yes.
Sure, and this
100%.
was
the
also
toys came first.
Yeah.
Yes,
but this was. I'm assuming this is because was it Reagan who lifted the restrictions on like that you could just market to children. Basically, there was like the FCC softened its regulations on making sure things were not as brazenly products just aimed at making kids want to buy things and then when that got lifted, then all of a sudden you have all these animated shows that were just directly tied to products.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what we're dealing. That's why JEM exists. Is because of Ronald Reagan on many levels. And we can talk about that.
So the JEM songs are all like kind of like rah-rah.
Yeah, uplifting, kind of like Debbie Gibson kind of vibes.
Like that song that Dirk Diggler sings in Boogie.
The Transformers song.
Yes. Like songs like that.
Exactly.
Like that kind of like you're a winner, you can do it, all that stuff.
Exactly.
Or they are songs about romance.
Exactly. Or the inner conflict of keeping your identity quiet from your boyfriend.
Or there's one song.
Well, maybe you wouldn't want to sing about that.
There's one song.
I got to keep my identity secret. Maybe don't write a song about it.
There is one song that I remember because I revisited this show in college. Was the last time I really rewatched a lot of it because me and my friends just got like a kick out of it because I was like, this show is crazy and like just we aren't even getting into we'll get into the plots of some of the episodes later.
Sure.
But like one song I remember stood out because it was a song where she's singing about the love triangle between her and Jerica, her normal person identity, and Rio, the manager who doesn't know. First off, that love triangle is just bizarre.
Right, because JEM's only it's flimsier than Bruce Wayne Batman. It's like JEM's only difference is like she has like different makeup on.
So then it's like Clark Kent. So it's like Clark Kent just putting glasses on.
Exactly.
And like he looks just like Superman. But
different hair, different makeup. But yeah, same thing.
Like Clark Kent must be the ultimate version of how is nobody realizing that that's Superman with glasses?
I think Sailor Moon is a better example of stupidity because she doesn't change her face at all. Same hair, different outfit. She changes clothes and no one recognizes her. It's very silly. But anyway, there's a song.
To be fair with the Superman thing, they're literally at a news office where they're reporting on Superman, and he's just like, "I'll write the article about Superman."
It's
that's
true.
I'm going to make a case that's nothing's dumber than a guy handing in an article about Superman when he is Superman.
So the song, JEM sings a song about the love triangle, and I think it's some lyric about like who is he kissing? And the lyric goes, "Who is he kissing? Is it me, or is he making love to a fantasy?"
Yes.
And I was like, making love
to a fantasy?
Like that's
Jerica.
That's bold.
Pretty ballsy lyric for a
Jerica,
children's
the orphans
show.
are going to hear you.
Yeah.
Because it is straight up. I mean, is this aimed at 8-year-olds?
Yeah, 8 and under, I would say.
It's aimed to sell toys to 8-year-olds. So Christy Marks, who wrote the show, Hasbro was like, we're going to make these toys. Here's what they look like. Showed them to Christy Marks. She was a seasoned like comic and cartoon writer at that time. I've been in touch with, she was on Twitter, and I found her on Twitter and was like, is this Christy Marks this was like 15 years ago. Is this Christy Marks from JEM? And I reached out to her directly, and she was like, oh, no one's ever really reached out before. Hello.
What?
Wow.
Via Twitter. And I interviewed her for a newspaper and like talked to her. She's really great.
Considering she was one of like, at that time, maybe 3 women in the history of the world who'd created an animated show.
And was
created in quotations, but she fleshed out the universe.
Prolific. And like her task was to sort of reverse engineer a show. And her whole thing was like, how do we merge Barbie and Batman?
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
And then, I mean, down to the orphanage, like, like Batman has Robin, Jerica has 12 orphans. Like that's, she pumps the volume on all that. But I get the sense from Christy that she's a person who like really takes young people seriously and is like, I'm not going to give you stuff that we don't think that you can handle. Maybe Making Love was a little too much, but
it was an outlier lyric.
The complexity of storyline is like pretty high for a show. It's not like
you might argue too complex.
I might argue that.
In terms of convoluted.
I would say I'm having a hard time following all these things you're telling me, and I'm older than 8.
And these are just the basic building blocks. We'll meet new bands.
Yes.
Okay.
A lot.
So it's real world building. So there's so much here. Just to set the table with you, Alex, what was your initial exposure to the show?
What was going on in your life?
How old were you? Where were you? Who were you? All of those.
I had an older cousin who was older just by a year, but she was like so much cooler than me, like very obviously cooler than me. And I also had a bunch of male cousins and like friends who were a couple years older who were boys, and I did not click with like masculine energy at all.
Yeah, that adds up.
That makes sense. It just didn't. It always felt like vaguely menacing, even when it was nice, like I just didn't like that.
Like what were some of the things they were into that didn't
like G.I. Joe?
Okay.
They loved G.I. Joe. Like G.I. Joe was everything.
And that just didn't.
It didn't speak to me. Like the text of it didn't speak to me. It seemed silly. This is very funny considering I was then like, it is cool, Jam. But it seemed very silly. Like all of it seemed like camp. And I was like, don't you, like even then I was like, don't you guys realize that this is like pretty campy? Like you're gravitating towards the wrong things. And
like, there's not enough glitter and glam.
There's not any glitter or glam. And then so my cousin Marisa, again a year older, cooler, had so many Barbies and had like gem dolls and had all of that, and I loved that entire universe of stuff, and I felt like safe in that universe of stuff. So then I knew about the show from in the reverse order. I knew about the show from the toys, and then found the show, and just like I think these shows, particularly pre-internet, work where it like gives you a fabric or a text to be like, I know who these characters are, I know what the atmosphere is, and then I'm going to go with I spent a lot of time alone as a kid. I'm going to go and just like imagine sort of like how I fit into that universe. Mm-hmm. And my like imagining scenarios in the Gem universe was, for whatever reason, I imagined that my aunt Gem, I have no idea why that was the relationship that I had. My aunt Gem ran a private eye detective agency.
Yes.
And so I gave her another job. I was like, you should have another job. Mm-hmm. And I worked for her going and solving crimes.
Oh, solving crimes.
Yeah. So I laundered my masculine fantasy through extreme femininity.
Wow, I love that. Wow. Wait, and so how old were you?
Starting at like 7, maybe.
Okay, so were you watching Gem in its original run or in syndication later?
I do remember seeing it in sort of at the tail end of the original run, but I would have been like 5 or 6 by that time. But it ran nonstop on USA.
Constantly.
All the time.
Yeah.
So I got it then, and I would watch reruns of like Gem, Saved by the Bell, California Dreamin', California Dreams. I can't remember which it was, and then
California Dreams,
and then occasionally 90210. But even that to me was like too. This is so funny in retrospect, but even that like felt like too menacing. Like it felt like too
masculine.
Yeah, too masculine.
Or just like the consequences.
The consequences, like Dylan's dad gets blown up at some point, and I was like, I was
gotta watch that show.
Yeah. So this is you. You're 7.
This is a lot to take in, by the way. You just said so many things.
We're gonna end up. I never thought I would say, I don't think we have enough time to talk about you as a child detective. I don't think we have time to focus on a 7-year-old Sherlock Holmes.
Do you remember what type of crimes you were solving? What type of mysteries?
Oh, I don't at all. I think like that for whatever reason that relationship was the most important thing. I can't quite understand it. But I think it was like, stuff that would mirror that would happen in the show. Like Eric's going to take down the company. We need to stop him from doing it. Like, platitudes really. Mm-hmm. But speaking of, did you guys see the Adam Brody movie Kid Detective?
No.
It's along these lines so great. He's essentially an Encyclopedia Brown character, like a kid who like was like a great detective at 12 or whatever, and we meet him at like 32 and he's still trying to hold on to it, and it's very sad about like realizing you're aging and no longer special.
Oh God.
That sounds like the greatest movie I've ever.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It got slept on because it came out during lockdown, but it's so good. It's so good.
So this show really spoke to you. What was the reaction to, like, say, your cousins, your male cousins, with you being so into Jem and the Holograms like and not jumping all over a G.I. Joe?
I think I remember one time when I had to be 5. I remember explaining to an uncle and like in front of my mother and being like, I love Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters is a movie. The characters' names are this. The actors' names are Bill Murray, Ernie Hudson. Like what I like knew sort of the different lenses of like, here's the movie, here are the actors. Like they are not real people. They are. And then I'd be like, Bill Murray is on Saturday Night Live. And I talk about that very young. And I remember him just like looking at my mom and being like, your kid's friggin' weird, Nancy. And like that has always been the vibe in the family, is they're like, this kid's a little off.
He knows too much.
He knows too much. Yeah. And it's like a little upsetting to hear him know what he knows and like what he's interested in. But they didn't like bully me. They were always kind.
Yeah.
They just did not know what to do.
So you didn't buy into the fantasy of film and television? Like, were you always thinking about?
I've always, for as long as I can remember, have known that there's this side of it and there's that side of it.
Interesting. Okay. So did you know much about? Were you interested in like animation production, or were you more fascinated by like, I know who the voice of Jem is, or the?
No, that stuff I didn't quite crack, but it was like
animation maybe remained a little mystical.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's right. Like that's a thing that I couldn't sort of unpack or know this character from this. Although now I'm like, that's Britta Phillips from Luna and Dean and like those things are, like many of us, how I relate to popular culture is like the text itself and everything that constructs the text and everything that's behind it. But that's been the case from the beginning.
Interesting.
You just had this ability to you were more of a realist as a kid in a way.
Sure.
Like did you feel like you were a young adult as a kid?
Oh God, yeah.
The whole time you were a kid?
It's never, my lens or sense of self or myself in the world, I don't think has ever changed. I mean, it's like evolved by way of, how you empathize and what isn't, like all of that stuff has changed. But I can look back at, I was doing this last night. I was like imagining where I sat in the lunchroom with my friends at like 14. And I remember the conversations and stuff, and they were very similar to this conversation.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. Cool. So you've always had people around you, friends who support.
I've had friends who are supportive, and they're like, what is he talking about? But they've always been lovely.
Sure.
Did you ever get bullied at all for liking Jem?
I got bullied for being faggy.
One could argue those are two in the same. One in the same.
And I'm using the terms that were expressed when I was being bullied specifically. Yes. But yeah, I got bullied occasionally for being light in the loafers. But
I got bullied for being heavy in the loafers.
Really? I see.
Bold dyke, I believe.
Absolutely. In the other direction, you understand. But I also have always been very tall, although I was like sort of sickly skinny. But I was tall enough where most people weren't like, I'm gonna
beat you up.
Yeah, they couldn't just shove you around. I had that also because I was taller than most kids, but I was a stick figure too. So
same.
Nobody, like, that was almost just enough to get you by, even if nobody could realize it's like, this kid's not strong. He's just he's taller than us.
Yes, I don't want to be surprised by his ability.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's not. If anybody would have taken a step back, they'd be like, oh, we could beat that kid up very easily. He's just taller. There's actually more area to punch.
Absolutely.
On a tall kid.
This was very my experience.
Yeah. So you found your thing. Did you feel like you said you had some people who just kind of got you, but kind of were like this kid's weird. What did it feel like? Did it feel like this was all yours and you were like, this was your special thing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, before we were connecting I think we all relate to this at the table. It's like there was a time before you could relate to people who were deep into your affinity group, and you could find every one of them on the planet at the time. And so there were like shows like this where your relationship felt very special and sort of very singular.
Yes.
And it wasn't like when I was in high school, there were the classic, there was like a small handful. My high school was grades 8 through 12. It was in rural Maine, and there were 400 kids in 4 grades. So it's not a big high school.
Sure.
But I remember, there were some kids, the like smart stoner kids who were a couple years older who would like have people over to their house to watch Twin Peaks on Laserdisc. And so like I eventually met people who got it, who like got stuff. And that was invigorating and wonderful. But I felt supported and I felt loved with the people who were around me, but I also felt like understanding was pretty limited. And so I started around like 14, 15 hitchhiking to the city, which was like 30 miles away, to go be around like punks and queers and
you really hitchhiked, like legitimately.
And which city are we talking about?
Portland, Maine.
Okay.
64,000 people, the big city.
The other Portland.
Was it, so it was safe, obviously. You're still with us today.
I'm still, yeah. I think that was maybe an occasional dodgy situation, but I did that. And then I got a learner's permit that I never used with a licensed driver and drove myself everywhere.
So how old were you when you literally put your thumb out on the side of the highway? Because I've never hitchhiked before. Yeah. I was terrified.
I enjoy being alive. So.
Sure, yeah. It started because my friends, like everyone in a rural area, like has to go to the city for some reason to like run errands or their job is there or whatever. And so I would start by asking my friends' parents if they were going in for work, if I could get a ride with them. Okay. And for some reason, my dad was often sick, and like people kind of knew that I was like I was really a feral child, a unmonitored child.
Okay.
And so for whatever reason, a lot of people came through on that, but there would be times where it didn't work out and I would have to like find somebody who I did not know to give me a ride, or I would like summon a car on the side of the road. But
once again, I feel like we could talk about that for like an hour of the people you hitchhiked with.
So again, you're 15?
15.
Okay.
I think started at 14.
Okay. So you started hitchhiking at 14. Mm-hmm. And when you would go into the city, just what would be the places you would go?
I would go to the mall because that's where you could find everyone hanging out. Everything. And then the mall was in a commercial district called South Portland, which is not, there's a Portland, there's a South Portland. South Portland has a commercial district where the mall is. And I remember learning while at the mall one time that I was like, where do you guys hang out? They're like, well, we hang out in Portland. And I was like, there's a Portland? Like I didn't even, and then so they told me about the park that they hung out at, and I went, and that was like the punk park, and I found that community of people.
Sure.
They were like, you belong with us.
What were some of the other, just briefly, some of the other cultural trappings that group had that maybe rubbed off on you or you related to?
I became vegan around that time because there were like the vegan punks. And I mean, honestly, I was just trying to people please. Like I was like, these guys seem serious about this. Maybe I should do this and I'll be accepted. Mm-hmm. Some of them maintained a food not bombs table. So we would like make inedible rice and beans to hand out to people.
Oh, that's nice.
It was like that sort of.
So there's a lot of community awareness and political awareness coming out of that.
Totally. Zines. I got into making zines. That's when I started making zines.
Were you, did you get into like activism and political awareness because of JEM and the Holograms when they went to visit the president?
When they saved the president from a kidnapping at some point, which is fantastic.
Yeah, the show starts with just music industry type stuff, and then by later episodes they are literally visiting the president. They're saving the president. They are going back in time to visit Mozart.
Yep.
They are
ripped from the headlines.
Yeah, the Misfits sick a mechanical shark on Kimber to eat her,
and
so
this
she doesn't
is all
win a competition
because of the supercomputer helps them travel.
I think Tech Rat built the time machine in a garage. I believe.
I don't know who Tech Rat is.
Tech Rat's great because he looks like a movie sort of caricature idea of like what a new wave guy looks like.
Okay.
But his voice is like a Ninja Turtles villain.
Isn't it literally Cobra Commander's voice?
Oh, you're right. It is Cobra Commander's
it's the same voice actor who also is very nasally.
Yes.
So, evil.
Nasally.
You talk like this if it's evil.
That's a good sign, a signifier.
Yes.
If I ever come across somebody who talks like this, I'll be like, "You're evil." So this show clearly meant so much to both of you.
Yeah.
Because what did it represent that made it so special?
Well, I think for me, I mean, we certainly weren't having nuanced conversations about gender in the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure.
But by way of it going, by way of its offering, which was let's do superhero stuff using superhero archetypes, but color it like it's a Lisa Frank Trapper Keeper.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there was like enough stuff that it was touching both categories in a way that I really liked. That eventually I feel like the X-Men cartoon did kind of well. Like that felt like a good compromise on superheroes and gender. But I was like, it offered I'm not going to say a masculine, but it offered, I think also like shows for girls were like, girls are dumb, so let's give them something dumb. Like that's what I think that they were trying to do. And this was like kind of the first thing that was like aimed at girls, but we're like, actually like they're smart.
Mm-hmm.
Let's treat it in a complicated way.
Well,
and
what's an example
appealed.
of something that would be girls are aimed at girls and talking down to them?
Yeah.
Like strawberry shortcake?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I think there's
like fluff pieces, you know?
Yeah. That it's like infantile.
Yeah, because like G.I. Joe was dealing with, real things and
No, but I mean, it's dealing with war.
They're,
These are
they're
adult.
conscripted soldiers.
Yeah, they are soldiers. They're fighting for freedom in America
Exactly.
against
So this
the
is
evil terrorist organization.
Yeah, so very adult.
Yeah, and whereas Strawberry
themes.
Shortcake is like, I make cupcakes.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So, see, that's what I was interested in.
No,
So this was
perfectly said,
This
yeah.
was something presented for young girls that was not just
It was more mature.
infantilized.
Yes.
It was
precisely.
more. It was a soap opera. It was more mature. There were more the relationships more complex. Like I think that's what drew me to these kinds of cartoons. Is there was a little bit more of a complexity to the relationships. I did love that 99% of the characters were female, and the men were like played a much smaller role,
very flimsy,
and they were all like just not great. The men are just not great.
Yeah.
And was this something you were both conscious of, or was it just like when you look back, you're just like, oh wow,
I had no idea.
Yeah.
But you just liked it.
Liked it. I like this. Like this and Punky Brewster were my favorite shows.
Yes, I loved Punky Brewster. And a lot of it for me was the aesthetics of the show. I loved, duh. It's just like,
Sure.
I love those colors. I love
Julia's
that fashion.
literally dressed like Pizzazz right now.
Yeah.
And I loved Punky Brewster. I thought she was the coolest kid. And so much of it had to do, it was like expression through fashion and through colored hair and through singing and dancing. And I was going to ask you, one of the questions I had for you was, because JEM was trying it attempted to be the most like 80s thing ever, like 80s MTV kind of, graphics and all that. And like, was that an aesthetic that you really liked? Was the 80s kind of Miami Vice kind of stuff?
Oh, now it's stuck in a huge way. Like there's a really marvelous Australian movie called Dead End Drive-In, and it pulls from, and it's one of my favorites visually, and it's so clearly pulling from all of this stuff where it's like fluorescent glow,
like the vaporwave.
Yes,
vibes.
exactly. All of that is huge. And to your point, yes, this is like what JEM was ultimately trying to do. Is they were like, the kids are watching music television. Let's make a new wave musical program for them.
Because this is 85, which is peak MTV. By that point, MTV was well established. Every cable network was carrying it.
Right. Each one of the episodes has 3 music videos in it. Like they are taking the fabric of what's happening in the culture and trying to like package it for kids who might not yet be old enough for MTV or are looking for a companion piece.
Yes,
for that.
or like, this is the step way towards MTV.
Mhm.
Yeah, they wrote a lot of music for the show. Like they had several composers.
Oh gosh, it's crazy.
I mean, they had to do 3 songs per episode.
That's unbelievable.
That's a lot, and they're
Yeah.
like, and they're not super short. I mean, they are short, but they're not. They're fully fleshed out songs that came on the cassettes that came with the dolls.
Right, and as a result, like several Gem songs went platinum because people bought the dolls and it came with the cassette, which technically was considered a sale.
Yeah.
And so
once in a while they can.
selling songs.
There are those things, like there was one time where like Prince gave a CD out with like the Sunday paper, and then had like a #1 album because like one of his later albums was like weirdly successful because of that. That's very interesting. Did you have the toys?
My cousin, I would not have gone as far as to have dolls yet. I think that was, I knew enough to be like,
social suicide.
I like this, but maybe I should not try out owning dolls with my parents. Although like later my father was born in 1931. We had a very complicated relationship in a lot of ways. When I was 12, I went to just go live with my father. And so like we lived together, and I always describe it as having a senior citizen for a roommate. Like that was our vibe. But despite all of his sort of whatever about being a person born in 1931, around when I was 12 and got into like really wearing sarongs and like nail polish and smoking beaties and stuff. Yeah, like a real classic. It's like watching Sonic Youth videos and being like, I kind of want to be like these people. He did say to me in passing, it wasn't an event, but he was like, if you're it's fine.
Well, that's very sweet.
It was super sweet.
Yeah,
it was like
nice.
so unexpected.
That's nice.
Yeah, but he was like, I think he did a limp wrist.
Oh, great.
If you're, and then he did a
like
little limp
Three's
wrist.
Company.
Sure,
Exactly.
Like
If you're a Jack
Mr. Roper
Tripper
move. Yeah,
exactly.
he did the little Tinkerbell Mr. Roper move, which is
oh my god.
that's one of those things that probably took everything for him to get to that point.
Totally.
Well, that's really touching.
Yeah, that's a
No
big
doubt.
thing.
Yeah.
To
Yeah,
say.
it was nice. It made all of our other conflicts sweet in retrospect.
Yeah, like I will say, I think as something that happened a lot with 80s cartoons, I think is that when people maybe think of Gem, really most people are thinking just of the theme song animation and how amazing that opening title animation is. Whereas compared to the rest of the show is like, God, it was television animation, 80s TV animation, which is usually garbage.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah, the like B-roll of the band playing in the videos is the same B-roll in 130 music videos. It's like they're just using clip art basically.
yeah, and I don't know if they did as much like reuse as like He-Man. You know what I mean? He-Man had those like rotoscoping reuse scenes. Like every time you'd punch the camera, it was like reused from episode to episode. But like, but yeah, it just really that title sequence. Kind of like similar to like, I don't know if you remember Thundercats.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Like
it has a lot of the same camera moves and stuff.
Yeah. The opening title sequence was so beautiful and like a stunning like work of art. And then you watch the show and it's just like, and like, it's just very, very limited.
Yes.
And, but kids' brains, what you remember, you choose to remember like the amazing parts. And that's the part you see again and again is the title sequence. So for me, I think, specifically that title sequence was just like blew me away and was like one of the pieces of animation that made me interested in wanting to work in animation.
Yeah, I had not even considered the fact that like this is the career you went into, but like yes, you can tell that.
Oh yeah, that too. I guess I forgot about that.
It makes a lot of sense in that context that you're like, oh, I could make this.
Yeah, I did.
So that was like a
about
foundational thing for you, clearly.
Yeah, and the Thundercats intro that had a huge impact on me. It's a really beautiful piece of art. But yeah, I want to know more about what was like the tail end of your Gem obsession and like what replaced it.
Oh gosh. I think that if it were on TV until I were like 11, I would watch it. And then from 11 to 12, like this is such a jarring shift. And this is a really jarring shift. From like at 12, I watched Clerks and Kids.
Well, there you go. Wow.
And both of those movies, no, for Kids, I had to be 13 based on when it came out, where I was, et cetera. So, and then I just got like I was saying with the movies and knowing sort of like my first job I wanted was like practical special effects. I watched every special and stuff like that. I wanted to do that. And then the 90s, as soon as I learned about like the history and what was going on with regard to like 90s independent cinema stuff, and could picture my relationship with like what was on screen, but then also like maybe making stuff, my coming of age into adulthood was just like, okay, leave the childish things behind. I am into movies that say inappropriate things and or make you feel uncomfortable.
Well, kids will do that.
Yeah, kids will do it, yes.
It welcomed me into the world.
First frame of that movie, I'm uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Well, and now I've recently been in sort of like looking at all my photography influences and stuff that I'm interested in there. I've reverse engineered all of the stuff that I was moved by or influenced by in one way or another were like all people who came out of the skate photography scene.
Okay.
So I just went from, pretty gay cartoons to indie skate culture, zine, punk, etc. That was, and then I felt very welcome in that community by either extremely dour, serious people or very whimsical people.
Yeah. And I feel like music is the connecting tissue among so many of these things. I mean, music is an important part of JEM. It's an important part of skate culture.
Totally. Music was the huge. I don't even think I would have identified that, but that's absolutely like that was the.
Would you meet people, like-minded people who also had the same love for the show?
Oh, sure.
Once you started talking.
Yeah, I remember like meeting. So there were like in I don't know what punk communities are like now, but at that time it was like there were like very serious crust punk. Like in retrospect, kind of insufferable people. And then there were like kind of
not in retrospect. It could be. Actually could have been at the time.
Could have been at the time. I was just like, I got to impress these people.
Yeah.
There was that. And then there were, kind of like people who were just like, didn't know how to fit into their own circles in one way or another. And those were the kids I loved the most and who I related to the most. And, they would wear like, chunky plastic fluorescent jewelry and like dye their hair and do like I imagine that I don't know what you were like as a kid, but I imagine if we met at that time we would have gotten along.
Oh, absolutely. I'm like sad we weren't.
Children. So like I remember I would hang with those kids and like we would just like eat boxes of Lucky Charms and smoke weed in the park and like those were my people, and they all had like a similar series of influences.
And over the years, what has been your relationship to JEM and the Hologram?
Oh yeah, did you see the movie, the live action film?
Refused.
Yeah, I was pretty angry. No, I was pretty upset when they made that movie because it felt. I mean, it was made by the guy who made the live action G.I. Joe film, so they were
self-proclaimed lifelong fan of JEM.
Well, I can't tell by watching any clip or trailer for that film. It was more just like a rip-off of Josie and the Pussycats.
Sure.
And also the storyline was the Josie and the Pussycats story, the movie Josie and the Pussycats, where it was like the lead singer's getting more attention than the rest of the band. It was infighting between the girls, which was something that JEM didn't do.
No, that wasn't
like the Holograms.
Although they did have that one episode where Kimber and the other, remember that? Where like there was one episode where like Kimber and the Kimber equivalent in the Misfits. Stormer.
Yeah, a very different name.
They felt neglected by the rest of the band and they created their own group for one episode.
But that's one episode. Totally. And also that involves women banding together. So it's like I hate that story of like the infighting in the band. I just think it's so boring and like overdone. And the fact that Synergy was no longer this. First off, they took JEM out of the 80s, which is like mistake
Rough
number
move.
one.
Yeah.
Like
she lives in the 80s.
Yeah, she lives in the 80s. It's like that's the show. It's a like love letter to 80s aesthetics. Yeah. And if you take it out of that, and if you remove all the campy elements and all the convoluted, crazy batshit stuff, it's not JEM. Don't call it JEM.
I'm a huge fan of the paradigm of the like Bewitched movie paradigm where you take the characters in the IP or the Brady Bunch the movie paradigm.
Love the Brady Bunch
where you take them out of their paradigm, where you take them out of their sort of context and put them into a modern context. Give me that JEM movie.
Yes. Well, when I saw the Barbie movie, what I was thinking so much of the time was like, this could have been what the JEM movie was like.
Oh, sure.
These aesthetics, these colors, this like bright. It's just like I was like, this could have been JEM, and people would have like loved it. But of course, Barbie has to step in and take all the. It was like, and Barbie had that competing Barbie and the Rockers.
Toy line.
Yeah.
Jem created a situation that Barbie felt like they had to match, where Barbie made equivalent toys, but I think Jem's line outsold
the
Barbie and the Rockers line.
But sorry, go on.
Oh no, I was gonna say you had the Jem. You had the dolls.
I did not have the dolls because they were too expensive. They were,
yeah.
and by the time I watched Jem, you couldn't buy the dolls anymore. They were because I didn't see it until it was syndicated in the early 90s.
And that stuff just cycles through where
but I did eventually come upon one Jem doll that was gifted to me by a friend who, like, one of these mean girls you become friends with, who she's like, if you want to be in my club, you have to do something mean.
Wow.
And it was like when I was like, okay, I'm lonely. And then like, I think a reward for doing some weird thing was like, she gave me a Jem and the Holograms doll, which was not one of the holograms. It was their video director, whose name was Video. And their choreographer's name was Dance.
Yes.
Which, you know.
They were like, there's so many names that these kids have to remember. Let's throw them a bone.
Sure.
Yeah. And also, like, the fact that Rio was the main love interest, and then come season 3, they introduced another love interest called Riot.
Yes.
So there's Rio and Riot.
Yeah. And all of these guys, like, in theory, they had, like, such... It felt like they thought that they were drawing on punk, but eventually we get into like Sunset Strip territory.
Yes.
And like, that's who Riot is.
Yes.
Is like Riot
He's
is
like a
basically...
hairband guy.
Yes, Riot is the hairband of the time.
But like the guys were also... I enjoyed the look of the men on the show because they had like purple hair and shit. So it was like... I was like, oh, these are fun boys. It wasn't as boring as...
Exist.
Yeah, it wasn't as boring as like Snake Eyes and... Cobra Commander.
Note to myself: dye my hair purple.
You would look nice with purple.
You would
hair.
look great. It would match your shirt, kind of.
Well, like I said, I always have to wear the shirt. I'd wear a different shirt. It's like, I don't like the hair anymore.
Could be like, like Jay Mascis is really into purple. Like he looks good in all the purple clothes.
Okay, well, maybe
you could do it.
Look, the night is young.
Jay, you look great.
So, what you talked to the creator?
Yes,
you met the creator of the show. Julia, you have had encounters with people behind the scenes on the show.
I participated in a Jem and the Holograms art show. I did a piece for the show, and then at the show was
what was your piece depicting?
Jem, and she was looking like a badass and sitting down, but
Just
I was
like
had her
a
holding a
proper,
microphone, and then I didn't realize it looks like one of those big vibrator things, and then I was like, that's fine too.
So it's like a proper tribute to Jem.
Shout out to Hitachi.
Exactly. Thank you for your service. But no,
your service.
But at the art show, Jem's speaking voice, Samantha Newark, was there, so I got to speak to her, and she had pink hair at the time. I had pink hair, so we were like, let's talk. And then also, Dean and Britta, we had them on Yo Gabba Gabba, and then we saw Britta at a party a few months ago.
Yeah,
Britta's just been at it. Like, she started that show at 21, and she's just been steeped in music for the past 40 years.
Her voice sounds so good in those songs. Like, she kills it. Even the theme song, she hits some notes in that song that I'm like, that's good. That's some good stuff. And also, I found out through Wikipedia today that Britta also, in 2010, Britta performed vocals on the MGMT single "It's Working."
Oh, that's amazing!
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, isn't that cool? Unless Wikipedia is lying to me, which it would never do.
No, it would never. It would never. That's fantastic.
I thought
I imagine verify that too.
Yeah, well,
I imagine at least one of those two grew up with an affinity for Jem. Like,
yes,
if not both. I mean, it was kind of psychedelic. It was like a psychedelic.
It was.
Show.
It's a psychedelic show. It had a lot of like very bizarre imagery.
Yeah,
and a lot of it was just because I think they also just became pretty. Judging by like the episode summaries, it's like they became pretty desperate and weird for more stories. There's a reason this didn't last more than
well. There's that race.
Seasons.
There was like the race for syndication, I'm sure, and then like towards the end, they had like 50 good stories, and then they're like, we really gotta pull
when they meet Mozart and he laughs like that.
Yeah.
Why did they make him do that?
Because the reason they made a Mozart episode is because Amadeus had just come out in the theater, and Tom Holland's not Tom Holland.
Hulse. Tom Hulse.
Tom Hulse's thank you. Tom Hulse's impression of Mozart is that.
Are you
Like, he does
serious?
that.
And he's like, call me Wolfie.
They're ripping off the movie Amadeus.
That's so
which is
weird.
Totally. It's like it's already weird to go to Mozart.
Yes.
But then to use this movie, this like prestige drama, where somebody slits their throat in the first 5 minutes of the movie is hilarious.
It's like layers on layers of weird. And it's just like explaining it to you, I'm like, this is the craziest kids show. It's so complicated.
My first impression is I cannot believe truly how much world there is on this
There's
show.
way too much world for even the show to explore. Like I mentioned earlier, it's like the 12 orphans, they don't really even get that much to do.
Right. But they were like, we got to put the orphans in. The thing that I'm grateful in, we got to put the orphans. This is a, shout out to the show and to Berta Phillips for sure, is like the thing that I'm grateful for. And I've been hearing this a lot. I've been listening to Yassi's Bandsplain series on grunge and like listen. And the thing that I didn't think about until she had framed it, and I'm sure a lot of people have written about it since, but I wasn't paying attention. But the thing that she put into perspective for me is like when all these Seattle soft boys come onto the scene and like start advocating, even though they're picked as being the stars and they're like pretty white boys largely who are the ones who are getting picked to represent it. They're going out and like advocating for women who are singing and sort of like mentioning their influences and doing that whole thing. And I feel so grateful to have come up in that time when that was at its hugest, because I never think that it's like 2 years earlier, and I'm just reared on Cinderella.
Yes.
Like it's a whole different scene or vibe. And I could have fallen for some of the trappings there or whatever.
Sure.
And she's on the show mentioned like when you hear quotes from people, she'll mention in the show quotes where people are like, they'll say this thing that I remember being shocked the first time I heard someone say it with certainty, which is like a guy being like, well, I don't really like female singers. Like I don't like listening to it.
Right.
And I remember the first time I heard that among like when I found like the hardcore kids in punk and like those became my friends very quickly. And I remember like someone who today, very intelligent person, said just so matter of factly, like, women singers aren't good. Like it's like not a sort of good thing or whatever. And my first fantasy as a child was to be in the employ of JEM, who's this female singer, and that so for me normalized a thing that was not normal at that time, which was like that a woman singer could be great. Actually, the entire universe of singers, they're largely only women.
Yes. I love that you didn't have a crush on JEM. You didn't want to be JEM. You wanted to work for JEM.
Yeah, and have her be in the family. Yeah. So I got some of the residual cool maybe, but none of it was, I don't think any of it was, not sexual, but none of it was like a pining or a longing.
It wasn't. The characters were not very like crush worthy.
No, they had nothing to.
A lot of that was based on just terrible animation, honestly.
Yes, exactly.
You can't really have a crush on something that's so crappily animated.
Yeah. But they had, with respect and love to the people who made the show, like they weren't deep, like multi-dimensional characters. Like they had a lot of drama, but there wasn't like, no, this is one of JEM's like side quirks that you love to find out.
Oh no, she's like a Mickey Mouse kind of vibe. There's really no personality.
It feels
there.
like a quantity game.
It is. It's a quantity
everybody
game.
Gets one trait.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people with one trait.
Yeah. And then the whole generation of people who came up on that show were like, we should make cartoons, but the people are depressed. Like that was like that was when things changed.
Like I would say one of the most interesting things about the character of Jerrica/JEM is that she is having a love triangle with Rio, and it's herself. That's the weirdest thing about her.
Wow.
There's something in there.
And Rio is also like he has like anger problems.
Yeah, he's very angry all the time.
Well,
he's angry and it's not cool to kick stuff if you're angry.
It's not cool.
Particularly if you're in a relationship.
He's like punching a hole in the drywall.
He's often doing that, but he is angry. I'm not excusing it, but he's angry because he's always being kept in the dark about a thing that is immediately in front of him.
It's deception. He's confused. He's in a constant state of confusion.
He's being Truman Showed.
It's betrayal, frankly. So she's pretty messed up.
Someone could say it's proto gaslighting.
She
Gaslighting for kids.
She was the ultimate gaslighter.
This is the cartoon. This is the adaptation. Is make the show, but actually give it the adult dimension.
That's what I wanted the movie to be. Is I was like, I wanted them to like take, as the Brady Bunch movie did. It like took these things, and then it was like, why don't we talk about how weird that thing was in like in the light of modern day with all our like new perceptions of mental health and human behavior. And
someone in JEM would get canceled so fast. Like
gosh,
they just immediately
All
someone
of
on
them.
the.
I mean, I think Pizzazz like threw Kimber into an active volcano at one point.
Or we'd welcome it. Or they'd get elected. They'd get elected to office.
Exactly.
True.
You're like, you're canceled. You threw someone in a volcano.
Wait, before we wrap
Yeah. Like, you're canceled.
before we wrap up though, I do want to know, did you ever do any kind of like fan art or fan fiction or
Oh no, like I drew a lot as a kid, and JEM never factored into that, but I ended up gravitating. The other thing that came into my life around the movie time was video games. And so I drew largely the characters from Mortal Kombat, which is a whole different.
Oh wow. Which characters did you enjoy drawing the most?
The women.
I feel like you and I have a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
like
Katana, Milana.
You might be the same person.
It is. We had lunch. We had lunch
split
the
in
other day,
half.
and it was shocking
Yeah,
how
I
many
know.
like biographical parallels there were. So, like,
No, for you to just say the words Mortal Kombat coming out of your mouth, I was
Yeah.
like, wow.
Yeah.
That is my number one most played song
oh
at
my
the
God,
gym.
So
Yeah.
good.
Is the Mortal Kombat song.
Rightfully
Yeah.
so.
That's very funny. So you did not like any of the male characters in Mortal Kombat?
No. They were very silly.
There are so many.
They were very silly. Yeah, I mean, all like enduring today, like pretty much like everyone who I'm friends with are either have, interesting to radical relationships with gender or punks or sex workers. And so like, I
Yes.
feel like that goes back to JEM somehow. And not that like JEM influenced it, but that's who I already was. And it was the first thing that I saw that I was like, oh, these are like,
Yeah.
I get these people. I hope I can meet them out in the world. And then, fortunately I did. And then fortunately I moved to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I know. It's like you gotta move somewhere else to
Totally. To
find
find
those
those.
people.
But I also, as a kid, just always wanted to live in California. So like it's,
Yeah.
because I assumed that those people were here.
Oh,
Sure.
Sam. Yeah.
And
I moved out here.
They
with-
are.
Yeah.
Who knew? So Alex, what is your 2024 looking like? You're doing a bunch of different things.
Yes. I'm making the show You Are Good. I'm making a short series about Lyle Lovett and other sort of mythical other people who've created interesting myths about themselves.
Okay.
I'm working on another show about the history of photography that came out of skate culture. So the stuff we were talking about earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, I make shows and stuff and shoot photos and make zines.
You love making things.
I love
Yeah.
making
and you
things.
love collaborating with people.
I do, totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Love it.
So doing a lot of making.
No. Well, this is awesome. This was so much fun and such a great, insightful conversation.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like we just barely scratched the surface of
Yeah.
so many things.
Watching
Yeah.
your face the whole time was a joy for me.
Well,
to watch
that's-
someone receive this information.
Yes. I feel like it's like the Matrix when all the stuff he learns how to fight, how to do this, how to do that.
But like none of it's stuff you wanted to know.
Stuff, exactly. It's like, this is like the pills that were left over after Neo got the good pills. I got the pills that teach you all about JEM and the holograms.
It's like the pink glittery pills
Yeah.
that won't really help you with
Yeah.
anything.
No, this is so much fun.
Yeah, it was very fun.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on and joining us.
It was lovely. Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right.
And we'll be back with another episode in a couple weeks.
We sure will.
Yeah. Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.